Good morning, everyone. This is Ron. I am glad that it's Saturday morning. I am glad that I am off. Uh, and what I've learned is throughout the course of the week, no matter what I go through, and a lot of times it's not a bad week. I don't mean that at all, but I really appreciate these sessions, and I've come to depend on them greatly. Uh, the refreshing feeling that I get from uh, hearing everybody's voice and talking about scripture or talking about anything, and even when we discuss something that may not always be pleasant, just the conversation itself and the energy from everybody is refreshing to me. So I really look forward to that, and I thank you guys for that. Uh, I say good morning, good morning. Uh, let's see. Last Monday we were together. We looked at Isaiah, the first chapter, and we were looking at that because it's reminded me anyway of where we are and who we are, and it sort of pointed to that. Um, and I got into Isaiah because I was looking at that sixth chapter, which I eventually want to get to. And when I was looking, I realized that I didn't understand a lot in it, and I was struggling with it. And I started backing up, and I got to that first chapter, and I thought was interesting. But that first verse really got my attention because it talked about not only who Isaiah was, but all those names in there meant something. So that's where we were on last Monday, and I'll kind of recap that in just a bit. But first of all, let's see if we have any questions or comments on anything else that we may have discussed previously, or something that you may have seen this week that you like to talk about. Any questions?
Um, yeah, Ron, this is Richard. I got a little something.
Okay.
I've been doing some reading and I came across something I forgotten all about. There was an experiment done in the 70s that I think is a wonderful, well, it's a metaphor for sure of what is at the root of a lot of, I think, of our societal ills. Anyway, it's called the Rat Park Experiment. And what they basically did, to say it simply, they put rats in put them in a box, and they gave them drugs or water or food, and they were isolated from each other. And the rats always went to the drugs, and many of them to the extent of not drinking any water or taking any food, preferring the drugs, and eventually dying. Then they did a variation on that, and they created what they called a park. They built a small space, open. They let all the rats come together. They put whatever kinds of little toy things that would attract the attention and interest the rats and all of that. And then they gave them access to the drugs, the water, and the food. And none of the rats went anywhere near the drugs. They just drank the water or the food as was appropriate, and they interacted with each other. So I think this just hit me like, yes, I mean, it's a metaphor for, societally speaking, where a lot of our ills come from. And it takes me back to the first two commandments, really, or you could say at least the second one, but the first two to me are two halves of the same coin, pretty much. That the importance of our working together with each other, and not necessarily all the time with any other purpose than just pleasure and having joy and etc. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting thing to come across, and made me think a little bit about how all the political agendas that have come knowing this, really, but purposefully trying to prevent or certainly not moving in that direction. And taking us to where, by and large, we are. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for sharing that. And I couldn't agree more. I have often said, I wonder where we would be, not just America, but as a global society, if we appreciated and built on each other's talents and instead of spending the energy that we do to manipulate each other. That's that's a great observation. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else any thoughts on this?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. This is George. I just wanted to just piggyback off of what Richard said. I mean, I was actually just doing some thinking about rats myself, but more importantly, using it, in another analogy where we talk about, again, rising above tough situations, which is basically just rats spelled backwards. But, at the same time, again, we talk about appreciating the journey that we're on and realizing, that again, it may appear to be tough, but I think through our conversation that we spend together, I believe we are rising above those challenges or tough situations. So I just want to share those thoughts because I was just thinking about reps in general and that whole concept. So, thanks, Richard, for just bringing that back to my thoughts. I'm done, Ron. I just want to share those thoughts.
No, thank you, George. Appreciate your input. That's another way of looking at it. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? Thoughts or questions? Okay.
Hey, yeah, this is Nick. Yeah, I know that study, Rat Park, that basically describes the way our society, which is not designed to assist people, it is designed to give freedom to corporate entities. It basically describes how our society places blame on individuals for the sort of quote unquote choices you make, end quote, as opposed to recognizing that people live under various structures and systems. And that ties directly back to the way in which the sort of European interpretation of religion informed the way American society develops and still develops. It's the reason we don't get some form of universal healthcare, even though literally every other, quote, developed country has a system closer to that. It's the reason we do a lot of things, but it is all tied back to the idea that you personally, regardless of your environment, regardless of what the context that you exist within is, you personally are responsible for whether or not you are righteous or unrighteous. And if you are righteous, you will be rewarded financially. If you are unrighteous, you will be punished, and you will be addicted to all these various things you could be addicted to. So it's just an example of the pathology underlying the way the sort of people with the most amount of power in American society still, to a major extent, view how human beings live and operate. Anyway, thank you.
There are also studies about rats that when they get overpopulated in a space that's too small, they start to turn on each other and commit what we might think of in human terms as homicide. So anytime any sort of creature is out of balance, they're going to be self-destructive. And there are also real world examples of kids who have ADD or depression. If they spend time out in nature, they get better. So it's just an example, various examples of anytime something is out of balance. Yeah, it's going to be self-destructive.
You're right. Thank you. Thank you.
But isn't the key to it, isn't it based upon having each other's self-interest at heart, being able to interact and make it, and having provisions enough for everyone within the group. It's when the provisions are limited, when the movement is limited, when living conditions are limited, that's when the problems begin. Isn't that the primary for what's going on?
And that what you described can easily be manipulated.
And it is. I see it as being manipulated daily, honestly, because when you really think about it, we when we talk about it in terms of people, especially in this country, we have been conditioned to live under conditions that's less than humane, and have gotten to the point where we defend those positions, or we make every effort to protect those areas that we don't even own. We own nothing there, yet we protect it because that's the only thing that you feel like you have any opportunity to exert some control over. And as a result of that, it's like anybody who makes an effort to move me from the place that I am in or to take over where I am, has to pay the price. And that in itself, as Richard described the rats, that in itself something that's offered by those who are in power, just as the test was orchestrated by those who had power over the rats. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And my, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pastor.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to go somewhere else with that, but go ahead. Then finish your thought.
We're going to say that the study that Richard mentioned was not without merit, and I wonder if we were to do a deep dive on that, if we would not see that it's studies like this that brought about ghettos or neighborhoods that have become plantations. I wonder if those kind of studies did that. And the reason I raised that is because there were studies done to make black people consumers. That was done with products, branding products. There were studies done to understand how it was possible to separate people from each other, making all of them feel like they have an opportunity to prosper. So I wonder if the study with the rats went beyond just the study for the drugs, but also they gleaned from that what could happen with people who were put in those kinds of circumstances. And thus we have the projects, and we don't have the areas of the park area, the place where we can commune in a communal way, but always on top of each other and everyone fighting for space. Thank you.
and that is as we have said, indeed by design. Uh, I was watching something the other day, listening. They were talking to people about the lottery, and a lot of people were saying, everybody they questioned was saying pretty much the same thing. I'm tired of living from paycheck to paycheck, and I thought, wow, that's a message loud and clear. Uh, Especially as things prices are inflated these days. If you look at a carton of eggs to orange juice, I mean, everything prices is just out of hand. I was talking to a young man that I work with that is from the Ukraine, and he said they took a same kind of approach that they did in Russia. They look at you and what your job is. So it's decided what you're going to do based on education, right? So if you are blue collar, if you quote unquote white collar, what all those things mean over there, that's determined what neighborhood you live in and what schools you go to and how you shop and whatnot. So with he and his wife being white collar but lower middle class, it would determine. It's not that the rent in this building or that building is based on these prices, but based on what we're going to pay you for your jobs. This is what you're going to pay for rent. This is what your your utilities are going to be. So in other words, it is just more of a systematic way of saying this is what we want you to end up with at the end of the month. So that type of control that you're talking about is a universal thing. And I just want to hear Nick mention about the healthcare system. Just where would we be if we didn't spend so much energy controlling people and manipulating things and really depending on and pulling those energies and appreciations for everybody. You may not have the Jeff Bezos where people have billions and billions of dollars, but you have a more balanced society. You have a more harmonious, intelligent people that find ways to build on that harmony and to get along and to grow and just where would we be? Where would the globe be if we wouldn't have a shortage or anything? It would just be, it just talk about a new earth that would be somewhere of just a dream, I guess, but just something to think about. Because a lot of energy is just spent on controlling people. Just a thought.
Real life begins with dreams.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's come from today's dreams. What you just described, Ron. If you have understandings of the system prior to World War II, Eastern Europeans were treated as second-class citizens in Europe. And the Eastern Europeans include, of course, Ukraine is one of those nations. The only reason that the Western Europeans are dealing with Eastern Europeans the way they do now is because of self-interest, desire to control or to exert control over the world population, inclusive of. As far as Jeff Bezos go, in a true capitalist society, you would not have individuals with billions and billions of dollars. That would not happen. There are socialist programs within the system that allows that to happen. Those programs that are socialist actually creates oligarchs And that's what uh, the Bezos and the Microsoft do, you know, and Elon Musk knows that's what they are. It has very little to do with that. The only capitalists in this country are poor people. The major corporations are not. They are not capitalists at all. We have to look at what the truth of it is. However, if we just think about what we have just spoken of, it will appear as though we are all doomed, but we are not. We are not doomed at all. We recognize the inequities in this society, in this world, in the world community, as well as understanding the suffering that comes as a result of the inequities. And these are the things that our desire, that we desire to change. And that change is actually on the horizon. It already exists in the spiritual and is beginning to manifest. And I do believe that most of us, if not all of us, will see a major change in how the world community functions in our lifetimes. So I don't want us to look at it with doom and gloom, thinking that there is no hope, because I promise you, there is hope. And the true nature of how society is supposed to function is within our reach.
Thank you. And I couldn't agree more. Not that they're not feeling hopeless. I couldn't agree more. Any questions, y'all, about this? Comments?
Well, there's a song, right?
Yes, sir.
Psalm 91. Psalm 91 talks about they that dwell in the secret place of the Most High abide under the shadow of the Almighty. After you read that first verse there and you start reading the rest of it, it begins to talk about those things that we should not be afraid of. It tells us in actuality that there's no reason to fear anything. And it actually speaks to, metaphorically of course, it actually speaks to all the things that we've talked about and more in terms of societal fears of things getting worse rather than better. And then it said the reason that that you shouldn't fear is because he has given the angels charge, or he meaning Yahweh has given the angels charge over thee and all of your ways, which means that the words that have been spoken in reference to the stability and the interaction in a positive way of mankind, these words are still, they still have the power to bring about into our existence the balance that's necessary to allay all the fears that people are laboring under now. However, those fears will not be allayed by the Creator. That's not going to happen. Yahweh is not going to do that. It's incumbent upon those who are on the journey for truth and understanding, those who have a deep love for humanity. It's incumbent upon them, us, to bring these things into existence. And if we are, since we are students of the Scriptures, I know that we understand that bringing these things into existence does not mean that we are going to pass laws to change things. We are going to bring these things into existence by virtue of our spiritual desires, based upon the understandings of who we are, and embracing who we are actually obligates us to embrace the whole of humanity. And in doing so, our desires is what changes things. Now, once the desires are embraced in a broader societal way, of course they become codified, but they don't become codified before there is a search for the truth of humanity. It doesn't get codified before there is someone who stands in the gap for the world community.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, y'all, on what Pastor just said? Anyone? Thank you. Great start to our day. Any other questions or comments on anything? As I started off mentioning, I wanted to, and we will at some point talk about Isaiah 6, and if anybody else sees something there that they want to go ahead and discuss, that's fine. But I was looking at it and I did not see, I had more questions than answers, but I started looking at Isaiah 1, and some of the things that jumped out at me was understanding more of praise and seeing praise totally different than we had talked about it before, or I don't remember a great deal of conversation about it. Just seeing it, praise as being an awakening in us, and awakening to your spirituality and who you are, and when you understand that, it releases you from that prison of all other obligations that you've had. Anything else that you thought were important in your life, you release that. So praise it talks about throwing up the hands. It's throwing away your power. It's throwing out your ambitions. It's throwing out your actions and all those other things that have entrapped you, that you thought this is what defines me. So we looked at that a little bit Monday, and at some point we'll get back to this, but that is kind of, that thought is the reason why I mentioned it's kind of what has fueled me this week, is kind of looking at that and not allowing things to bother me as I have. I guess you can say I'm growing, I guess, not allowing myself to be entrapped by anything, especially things that happen on your job, because things happen to kind of pull you in one direction or another. But that is kind of, that this understanding is kind of fueled me this week. As Pastor said, can I ask you to mute your phones, please? But just understanding and knowing who I am, and as much as we talk about that, at some point in looking at this, it kind of hit home, and that is kind of has me, I guess, a little excited when I saw that and kind of understand it. So, but anyway, just wanted to add that to our conversation here. I do have one other. Yes, sir.
Back to that question, going in a different direction. What you just said, I think it's so simple, but it's something that we should give more thought to. You said you did not allow yourself to, my words, not yours, move in that direction. You did not allow yourself. That is extremely important. Even though we say that, we still at times ask God to do stuff. So if you don't allow yourself to do something in terms of what you were speaking of, then why is it that we ask God to change things or ask God to intervene when the intervention is always on our part? But what I'm saying in essence is this. There are people around us, of course, there are people on the phone as well, who, when they, quote-unquote, say their prayers, they are asking God to intervene for different people, on behalf of different people. They're asking God for deliverance from sickness or disease or from prison or whatever for other people. When we make statements about us not allowing ourselves, then that means that we have the power as well as the responsibility to intervene on behalf of others, not with the expectation that that the one who created us is going to alter things, as opposed to us being the ones who are the interventionists for the purpose of changing the course of the life of those who grant us permission to do that. And when I say grant us permission, I'm talking about people who call you and ask you to intervene on their behalf, or people who call and say, I need your help more. And in my particular case, all I say is, okay, I got you. And I never ask the Creator to intervene for any reason whatsoever. I do it myself and have been doing it for quite a while. And I suggest real strongly that we give deep consideration to this and make observations as to how things are changing when we intervene, as opposed to asking what we have been taught, a distant God to intervene for us. Thank you. I just didn't want us to miss that point that you made, that's all.
Thank you. I had one other question, if and it's going to take us in a totally different direction. So before we continue, is there anybody else? Any other questions or comments? Anybody gonna comment on what Pastor just said, or any other questions? Okay. One of the things that has got my attention.
I'm sorry, Ron. I'm late getting in to respond to you. What Pastor said is very freeing, and I found that being able to not rely on quote unquote an outside entity to help me or fix things for me was very freeing to me. But that's because I believe that the God I created was an outside entity, up there, out there, beyond me. But as I realized that there is no outside entity, that I am part of that entity, that all-knowing, all-powerful entity, then it changed my total focus. And instead of expending energy, prostrating, and all of the stuff we did when we thought God was external to us, all the things we thought we had to do to get its attention is no longer what happens. And so the freeing part is the inner aspect of, okay, this is bothering me, this is bothering someone else. Let's just handle it. And so there is nothing more freeing than not having to depend on an entity that you think is external to yourself, because that entity that you thought was external to yourself is you. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you.
And that sort of in the religious sense, seeing the creator or whatever deity as some separate thing that you must appease in order to gain the favor of is a form of spiritual cognitive dissonance, like we mentioned cognitive dissonance before. It is like attempting to swim against the stream, so to speak, of the flow of energy into yourself from its spiritual source. And it is like any other analogy we could come up with, where you're fighting yourself in a lot of ways. Because to prostrate yourself before something you are imagining that is separate and out there, you are creating the distance that you perceive between whatever it is and yourself, instead of knowing the spiritual nature of the self and, like as we said, realizing the responsibility and the sort of freedom that comes with that. And that freedom is not without responsibility, of course, but it is the sort of reunification of your sense of self with your spiritual source or your spiritual nature, which is not separate or distant or somewhere out there. And that is sort of a fundamentally difficult thing to grasp intellectually, that we are the creator. And yet we, as we know and understand ourselves within this physical context, are not the creator. But the process of spiritual growth, the process of enlightenment, is learning to resolve that apparent contradiction. But there is no contradiction. There's only a lack of awareness. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Mick, when Pastor was talking about Psalm 91, that really struck me, because that's a passage that I've read, well, not recently, but when I was sort of in my Bible study, that's a passage that I would read over and over and over again. And it talks about in verse 9 that you have made the Lord my refuge, even the Most High your dwelling place. But it's not talking about something outside yourself. It's talking about you, and how if you trust in the Creator, you are connected to the Creator. That secret place is inside you, and it's your belief in yourself as part of the Creator, and that you can create your reality because you know who you are in terms of your connection to the Creator. So yeah, I guess I'm agreeing with you. But that just really struck me that and we should probably go through that psalm at some point to expound on it a little bit, because it seems to indicate that the Creator is something outside of you, but it's not. It's I guess that would be a misinterpretation. But that secret place where the Most High dwells is inside you.
Yes, ma'am.
All that was just described by everyone is what Jesus meant, or part of what Jesus meant by being one with the Father. That's all I wanted to say.
Say that one more time for me, Sheldon. I didn't catch it.
I said all of that which was just described is part of
Uh-huh.
what Jesus was talking about when he was saying to be one with the Father.
Okay.
It's you being one with the Father in terms of one. I'm trying to figure out how to actually say it. Being a part of, doing the same exact thing, being Elohim yourself, not feeling at all, as when Ms. Bob was talking about, trying to actually help ourselves or others, and having to depend, or pretty much in a way petitioning some outside entity or something outside of ourselves, versus having the ability and the power to determine or do things ourselves. Of course, in a lack of a better word, but essentially it being on you, both as a responsibility, but also as an ability to do it yourself. So it's also, of course, I think as everyone can see, a gift in having the ability to automatically do something or have, I guess you would say on situations, outcomes, our lives, helping others, etc.
Thank you. I want to add something to this as well, and you guys really just summed up again that first verse in Isaiah, and I want to mention that one more time because I think it kind of talks about what everybody has said. It said the vision of Isaiah, Isaiah 1:1. The vision of Isaiah, the son of Amoz, concerning Judah and Jerusalem, which he saw during the reign of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. To see that how spiritual that is, he's talking about 4 different kings here. He has a vision that spans the reign of 4 different kings. So this is talking about something spiritual, meaning that it is not something extended in time. This is something else. This is something beyond that. And what it is talking about, if you see yourself being and Isaiah, you see yourself as being you. This is when you recognize that I am a deliverer. The thing that I was trying to understand, I have become. I am a deliverer. Because you look at this, and every one of those kings talk about something freeing you. Even the name, I am the son of Amoz. Amoz talks about when I become strong, when I become alert, when I start to see my strength, when I recognize who I am and what's going on. In every one of those names, Uzziah talks about the strength of Yah, to be strong, to be mighty. Jotham talks about the Lord is perfect, to be complete. Ahaz talks about to take a hold of something or to grasp something, to possess something. Hezekiah talks about to be strong or to stand strong, to be strengthened. So it's talking about the journey that each and every one of us has taken individually and collectively, because in walking in this truth, we have found each other on the same path that we were walking on. And although each one of us had to take our own individual steps, we were strengthened by the same things, and that is truth. Truth is truth is truth. And when you walk in that, every step we took was strengthening us. So this journey that we're on, we have all become deliverance. And when you become deliverance, you recognize that I am praised. I am moved to the place where I am free. I am not struggling anymore. I am coming through an awakening. I am not in the bondage of all the things I see in this world. So this is kind of all, to me, kind of sums up everything that everybody has been talking about. It's where we are right now. And it goes on to say more, but just that first verse, just so much in there. anyway, anybody else, questions or comments? Okay. I have a question, and this may take us in a slightly different place, and not that well, I'll just say it, and we'll go from there. I'm in Luke, the 23rd chapter of Luke, looking at the crucifixion. You guys want to turn there? And I'm not going to talk a lot about what's around it because you guys understand what's around it. I'll just start in the 33rd verse. My question is at verse 34, though. It says, "And when they came to the place called the Skull, there they crucified him and the criminals, one on the right and the other on the left. But Jesus was saying, 'Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing.' And they cast lots, dividing up his garments amongst themselves." My question is to that is, from what we have been taught the crucifixion to be about, the purpose of this thing, why was it necessary to ask the Father for forgiveness? Why is this even necessary? And he has said openly in other areas that he forgives people. I forgive you. So why is it not him saying here, I forgive you? Why does he ask the Father? And why is this even necessary? Is this saying something else? And maybe that's a question we can come back to later. I don't know. But just something that I've kind of stood out to me, got my attention.
Ron, could you elaborate a little more? I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, I'm asking based on the fact that he's crucified here, and looking at why they crucified him. Is he taking on the sins of the world, as we've been taught that to mean, and he's dying for mankind? If he's dying for mankind, why is it necessary to ask for forgiveness? Does he not have the authority to forgive himself? Why does he ask the Father for forgiveness? It's a two-part question.
I think there's a lot sort of wrapped up in the true nature of what this is describing. The sort of process of crucifixion, as well as the life of Jesus, of course. But there are many layers to what this is. There are the sort of mundane, obvious things, as in the physical act. There are the metaphysical and spiritual, symbolic, in some way ritualistic descriptions of a spiritual event that is being played out in the physical. And just many aspects to what this really is in terms of what it is conveying, both in the Bible itself and historically, however it occurred. And there is debate about whether or not this happened physically, historically. I do believe that these characters, in many cases, did exist, but the way they are described in the Bible is very much a reinterpretation of a reinterpretation of the actual historical events. Now, I do believe that the historical Jesus was killed, but I believe what we see here is a mix of historical, metaphysical, spiritual, and symbolic imagery. Because we just previously been talking about how the sort of fire that is present and within, and the Kundalini serpent and the fire serpent are raised up, and they go up towards where, of course, your skull. So the crucifixion of Jesus at the place of the skull contains more of this kind of information in it than just a physical event. That said, I do believe when he says, Father, forgive them, first of all, that word Father is probably one that is, as we've said in here, is not exclusively male, and that it is an aspect of the spiritual self. So this is just me sort of hearing this, not for the first time, but thinking about it now. I would bet that he is talking to a part of himself or speaking from a part of himself. And I say that, well, essentially he's saying, I forgive you. But according to, and he's doing that because according to legend concerning the life and times of the historical Jesus, he was responsible for taking the life of another person when he was young. And in some ways, his experience on the cross is the karmic restitution or the karmic balance for what he did when he was younger. So in forgiving the people who are destroying him, he himself was released from the karmic obligation that he took on when he killed someone as a kid. Now, I know that might seem out of nowhere, but there are other sources for the life and times of the historical Jesus that don't really come through in the Bible, but that are present. And in a variety of places, one of them is, a variety of them are hinted at in some of the apocrypha, as they're referred to as those lost books of the Bible, as well as those books that are not included, like the Gospel of Thomas and other things that might be associated with the Gnostic tradition, etc. But I say all that to say that I believe in this instance, he is forgiving them, or from his own spirit, he is not condemning them. And in that way, he's releasing himself from a karmic bind that he himself created earlier in his life. Thank you.
Dick, go ahead, Audrey.
Well, I kind of wanted to comment and also ask a question. Because it says the criminals, one on the right and one on the left. Well, my question is, what does that mean? But I think it means, it's not talking about literal persons there. It's just talking about the out of balanceness, that where you get thrown one way or the other and you're out of balance on either way. And he's saying, and I don't know if he's talking about himself being out of balance either way, or he's talking about the people around him who's done this being out of balance. But either way, he's saying because of that out of balanceness, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing because they're out of balance. Okay, so that's a comment, and that is also a question.
I'm very familiar with what you what you were stating, Nick, in regards to Apocrypha and its relationship to the historical Jesus. I see, Arja, I or Nick, one of both of us will come to the answer to your question in a moment. I see another layer to this forgiveness also. I see it when he says forgive them. I see Jesus speaking more about the restoration of humanity that's out of balance, because forgiveness speaks to the restoration of those who are being forgiven. And I do believe that he's seeking the balance to mankind, which means that he's saying that humanity is out of rhythm with the universe, and he is requesting that rhythm be restored, that humanity rather be restored to the rhythm of the universe. And if we think about it, what we are actually seeing here is the forgiveness that we have been taught that is for the Romans, but it's not. It's for everyone, because even though the deed was done by the Romans, the deed was instigated by the pastors, by the priests, by the religious sector of society. So that rhythm with the universe had to be regained by those who were out of rhythm, to the extent that they brought this to be. And as to the rhythm of the universe with Jesus is concerned, when you really think about it, Jesus was not in perfect rhythm with the universe at all times, because in the garden he said, if it be your will, let this cup pass from me. Perfect rhythm, that those things would not have been said. If Jesus was in perfect rhythm, then Jesus would not be able to experience the temptations that we experience, for we have not a perpetuator who has not experienced the same temptation that we have. That's what the scripture says. So in order for Jesus to have our experiences, there would have been periods as we have those periods when we are out of rhythm with the universe itself. As to the criminality of those on the right and on the left, I think it speaks more to humanity being out of balance. I think it speaks more to the criminality of humanity, not the criminality based upon the laws of the land, as much as the criminality that's based upon the principles of the kingdom itself, based upon the principles that we were created to sustain in this earth, or to bring about in this earth realm. I do not see this as a physical, historical thing only. I see it as a spiritual message. I see it in a metaphysical way as well. So those are the elements that I see within the confines of this story. I'm not sure. I know that there are other layers to this. That those are the ones I see currently. So, Audrey, I hope that I at least partially address the response to your question.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else? You're welcome. Thank you for bringing it. Is there anyone else?
Yeah, I wanted to add a little bit to what has been said when Nick was talking about the Father. That the word that is actually used there is Abba, and it's the same word that starts off with Abun, the first part of Abun for the Our Father's prayer. And as we have discussed, that is not just a paternal thing is like a mother, father, and more so speaking to the divinity of the higher self. And again, the same, for lack of better words, entity that Jesus was speaking about in the Our Father's prayer. Um, in regards to what you asked or commented on about the one to his right and left, Audrey, um, it occurred to me, well, everything, mostly everything, as Pastor Richard was saying, with Jesus, what he did was he empathized and was one not only with the Father at times, but had a keen understanding or even being one with uh, everyone else as well, in terms of being one with them and understanding their heart. Um, and even in that particular sense, when he was forgiving, asking for forgiveness and asking, in a sense, as I guess, well, at least I have traditionally looked at as him asking forgiveness for those people over there to do right, the criminals, etc. Um, no, he saw them as part of himself and saw them as part of him as well. So as we say humanity, that includes himself. So he is asking, I think, as Nick said, for forgiveness for himself as well, because he sees himself as being one with everyone. And as Pastor Richard mentioned, he was not, perfect um, by any means in terms of not being tempted or not dealing with, certain things that we deal with and everyone has dealt with on a regular basis as well. Finish.
So Jesus was not a perfect entity, but he knew how to bring himself back into balance.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Yes. He had definitely explored that and worked very, I don't want to say very, very hard, but I guess you could say it was a huge mission of his own, something that he had been dealing with or working on greatly from an internal standpoint. And as Pastor Richard mentioned, those rules, no rules of the land, so to speak. These are what would be considered kingdom principles, spiritual principles, and laws and things like that, where he can understand from understanding himself that these other people were out of balance as well. He could relate to them and knew exactly what they were going through and going on. And it's just that they were unable to see or understand what he, at that particular point, was able to see and understand and experience. But he definitely knew that they were exactly the same. And basically, they had the same potential to reach where he was, and of course, that's exactly what he wanted. And so, the work he was doing for mankind was the work that he was actually doing within himself. That's how he was doing work for mankind, doing that work or concentrating on that work within.
I
That's
agree with that.
sorry. That's a pretty profound statement, I think, Sheldon, because because we always saying that we're working for humanity, and I'm not sure we all believe that. So, and I don't mean that we disbelieve it. I just mean we haven't come into the confidence of it yet. So to hear that makes me feel like, yeah, I can get there. I can get there too. If I keep working on myself and finding balance for myself, I will be there too.
Audrey, I see it the same way you were seeing it in terms of it's been a message to us that you work at it, you'll get there. And also a message to us, don't beat yourself up. because you see that you're out of rhythm at times. Just make every effort to strengthen yourself so you don't do that to the detriment of your spiritual growth. When you said that, so he was not perfect. He was complete, but not perfect. We have been taught that if you say Jesus was not perfect, then you're blasphemous. You're blaspheming, however you don't know. Y'all know what I'm talking about. But anyway, if there was now completeness and perfection are two different things. I think we've established that over a period of time. This idea of perfection. If Jesus was perfect, we would never be able to walk in his shoes or do what he did. The other thing about that is if he was perfect, why did he turn over the tables in the temple? Think about it this way. You are having a bake sale at your church, or you're selling dinners at your church. And I come in there and turn the tables over with your food, your money, everything, that turn the place out. Are you going to call that righteous indignation, or are you going to call that imperfection? Because that's exactly what he did. He functioned just as much as a human as we, because he was human. And when he said, I'm the Son of Man, that's an awful translation. He is saying that I am human. I am a human being. In other words, do not deify me to the extent that I am beyond who you are, because I'm not. I am as you are. Now, if you are a student of history, especially that of religions and spirituality, what you will find is that every nation had its semblance of Jesus. In ancient Egypt, it was Haru. And if you read the story of Haru, which existed, of course, before Jesus came into this earth, if you read the story of Haru, you will see that the same things took place in the life of Haru that took place in the life of Jesus. So when we talk about the different, when Nick mentions the different layers to it, and we expound on the different layers, these are the layers that we ought to be aware of, at least. And in order for us to be complete and to be in this earth functioning on behalf of humanity, on behalf of mankind, then we must, as Audrey stated, embrace that and realize that it is a continuous growth process. If we are here for that purpose, then we have to undo some of the things that have been done that still keeps us in bondage. And one of those things that has been done that keeps us in bondage is Easter. I do not think for a moment that this came up at this period of time haphazardly. I do believe that the universe instigated this discussion because it is necessary to put this in the macro during a period of time when the mind of humanity is open to what Jesus' purpose in the earth was. I make no apologies for the layers that we are discussing today, and I ask those who are feeling uncomfortable to think about what your discomfort, where your discomfort is coming from, rather, in relationship to what the scriptures say about Jesus. There are more theories made up about Jesus than there are realities about Jesus. And those theories that have been made up about Jesus, all of them use Scripture as their foundation when there is no Scripture basis for them at all. So I encourage you to keep your mind open and keep your heart open so that we are able to receive as the universe sees us. The idea of Jesus saying, Avun, as Sheldon said, is Avun, Abba. That is also speaking to the universe, because the idea of Avun is also saying, means rather, universe. This idea of being one with, quote unquote, the Father, or one with the universe, simply says that we are in rhythm with the universe. That's where that unicity, that oneness, comes into play. It means that we are in rhythm with, or we are the same as this universal intelligence is. There is no separation between us. And the only thing that gives us an improper sense of separation is the imbalance that we experience. And the greatest thing that has kept us separate in our minds from the existence, from our existence as being the same as our Creator/universe, is religion itself. It has worked very hard to keep us separated in our minds from the reality of who we are, and that has been done for selfish purposes. And we are at a stage now where we should be spiritually mature enough to embrace the reality of what in the scriptures, knowing that they are allegories, and the scriptures loaded with allegories, metaphors, to speak to spiritual truth. So I say all of that to say this. Make yourself available, truly available, to whatever the Creator, whatever the universe has to say to you or to open you up to. Why? Because the only way that there is going to be a change, and the only way we are going to see the world community be what it was created to be, is for us to be who we were created to be, and embrace the reality of the change itself, even though there are times we may not understand all of it or understand any of it at that moment. I promise you, the understanding is available, and it will come at the right time. Thank you. And I hope I've addressed some of those questions that were in your mind. Please raise the questions.
Thank you, sir. And I just want to echo, yeah, it's to truly pull back the degree to which the spiritual nature of the teachings and the messaging and the historical events and how all those things relate, however they do, to truly pull back all those layers and sort of undo the layers of confusion that were added by various religious settings is a difficult thing to do, because it forms the basis for how so many of us were taught to see all of these things as well as ourselves. And yet, the more you investigate into the nature of your own spiritual beingness, the nature of your own self, the more that those layers are removed more easily. The more of those layers of confusion that were added, you can recognize them for what they are. But it is a uncomfortable process.
If I can add something here, I guess I had a supposition on this when I looked at it, and this one, my example is I bought a book the other day, a couple weeks ago. But I'm just opening it on Angela Davis. It's an autobiography, and although I know her story and I grew up hearing about her, I did not know all the details, and I want to know the details. So I bought a book about her, and I'm reading that book. The other example, I'm going to pull these things together, is you've heard me in the past talk about a dream that I had, and the dream is reoccurring. The dream is me watching a river flow, and people are around the river, and these sages come to me, or these men who I assume are sages, come to me and says, the water is too high. There's a disruption here. There's something needs to be done, and it's moving in the wrong direction. And I'm thinking, why are they telling me this? And something in me tells me, you can fix this, fix it. And so by meditating on the waters, I stop the waters. The waters come to they first get more rough, and as though they were kind of hosing it, but they eventually stop because I didn't give up, I suppose. And they reverse in the right direction. And then the water is smoother, it's calmer, and it goes down. Now, how do those two things come together? The second one with the dream, suppose that's not mine. Suppose that dream is hundreds of thousands of years old, and it came to me in a time to show me something. The other one is a historical event. I see there are people who read the scriptures as a historical event. It is something that happened. I see there are people, or suppose there are people, that see the scriptures as a spiritual awakening that has been passed down from generation to generation, thousands of years, but has been put into ink, has been put down on paper, but it's still very spiritual. So depending on where you are, this can be a historical event, or it can be a spiritual event that you pull from what you need to pull from it. I don't see that. I see all of this, I guess, as energy. And I wonder, has this really happened? And I don't want to lose anybody. I hope somebody can help me straighten this out. But I wonder if this whole book is historical, or is it part of a spiritual passing down to man, and you use out of it what you are to use out of it. For example, if the understanding of being Isaiah, I see that we are the ones that said, send me. Not we being the people, but we being the energy of strength. We being the energy of deliverance. We being the energy of clarity, and we being that physical energy, that verbal energy that is on paper that people can see come to life and understand it. So if you are deliverance, are we the ones that are doing the forgiving? Is that an ongoing thing that didn't happen as a history event, but is ongoing now? And we're pulling that from which is in the pages, that is in our hearts and minds. I think Sheldon and summed it up when he said Jesus did this eternally. And I don't remember his exact words, or is how he helped humanity. And Audrey said that gave her some hope. That is what we've been talking about all along. We change mankind by changing ourselves. And as we recognize that we're more spiritual, I wonder if all of this has happened or is actually happening as we understand it and live it, which means every detail of it doesn't have to be a reality. You just be the deliverance, whatever it takes to be the deliverance for whoever needs delivering at that time that you are in their presence or speaking, or not even in their presence, but as we're doing on a weekly basis. So suppose that is it, that it is not history at all, but something from another place.
We were told it was history, but it was never intended to be history. It was intended to be exactly what you're saying. A book to speak to us and, about being deliverance for humanity. What I saw and what you are saying is this. When I said that I gave up my free will, I don't remember anyone asking me why. However, I see that as me giving it up because I did not know what to do with it. I did not know how to glean from the scriptures what was necessary for mankind to change. So giving up my free will gave opportunity for a room, the universe, the Father, however you want to term it, to guide me to those portions of the scriptures that were necessary for me to deliver the minds of those who I was teaching, to deliver them from the bondage of religion. Without having given up the free will, I would have been continuously searching for an understanding that would be continuously escaping. This idea of free will simply is that you have of the energy that you are, and this energy is an energy that you choose how to use it. It is up to you. You can utilize this energy for everything you choose to rob a store, to rob a bank, to kill someone. That energy is totally under your control. So when I talked about giving up my free will, I was relinquishing the control of that energy to the one who gave it to me, the one who created me to be that energy. Because again, I say, I did not know what to do with it. I did not know how to use it. I'd made so many mistakes in my life making efforts to understand. However, now that I have relinquished the control of that energy, I have greater opportunities to see with a greater understanding the landmarks in the Holy Book that guides us along this journey to a place where we don't only deliver, we become deliverance itself. We become the Yeshua itself. We become the essence of everything it takes to bring a global community to a place of unicity, a place of oneness, a place where it loves itself as well as everyone around it. So when you're talking, Ron, about what's in this book in terms of guiding us to this along the way of truth, I do think that beyond the shadow of any doubt, that history is extremely important as a guiding force. However, the force that must dominate our thoughts must be the understandings of the Holy Book, because it is written in a form, a earthly manner, so that our earthly minds can grasp it. However, what it does is gives us the opportunity to ask ourselves, so what does all of this mean? What is important about a light being in Sarah's tent, that kind of thing. And with that kind of curiosity, we are guided towards the spiritual understandings. Yet, we are not supposed to see this as a book of history or an historical account of how things were, rather a spiritual account of how things should be. Thank you. Oh, does that encapsulate what you were saying, Ron?
Yes, sir. Definitely. I see this as it's all spiritual, and as we move into that direction, we, as Audrey say, I can be this. I see myself now. I really see myself as moving here. That, as you just said, Pastor, I'm deliverance. This ain't just talking about a man named Jesus. I'm deliverance. And this is written so that we, because as at least me, as a human, I see in pictures. I see things. So as I read these, I see a man named Jesus, but in reality, I am moving now to the place where I see the energy of this being Yeshua, this being this energy that is not at all perfect in a humanly way, but I am complete as to what I need to be to bring about humanity to deliverance, back to truth. So, looking at it from that regard, the forgiveness is ongoing as we understand and open up the book inside of us and see it all, those dark corners that are in us that we uncover. Something important you said, though, I don't want to miss, because I had never thought of free will like this. I think of free will, when I have thought of free will, I think of, okay, James Rich want me to come help out on his farm. I don't want to do it, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it today. I'm gonna go and do what he needs me to do, and I'm gonna follow him, and I'm not gonna argue with him. I'm gonna do. And this might be a poor example, but I see it as I move in this direction so much that I don't see my ambitions, at least right now. I'm going to do it this way, and I'm committed to doing it this way. But I had never thought about it as energy. There is, from what I understand you're saying, is the Creator has given energy to James Richard to do whatever he wants with it. And the Creator has given energy to Ron Johnson to do whatever he wants with it. This is for Ron. And if Ron moves to the place where he gives back this energy, then it opens Ron up to see truth and be who wrong. And that's what I hear you say. The free energy that the free will that each one of us has is something that is set aside for each and every one of us individually. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, you are. And that is what makes us a link in the chain. It's given to us individually. However, it functions better when we function as a collective. The chain becomes stronger because each link embraces who it was created to be, and each link realizes that it cannot bring a balance to bear on its own. It is us being a collective that does it, and that is the reason it speaks of the 12 that Jesus had. It's not so much the number of people that were with him as it is what they represented. And as a result of that, here we are, having been brought across the great waters in order for us to become the deliverers that we are, being brought across the great waters to become a nation without even knowing we are a nation, having to develop everything earthly in terms of culture, but at the same time maintaining a oneness with spirituality. Here we are at this time in this period in this earth realm, this earth consciousness, where we have been brought together by our Creator for the express purpose of deliverance. And that is the reason Jesus said, not only will you do what I've done, but greater things. It's because Jesus was simply telling us that you are the energy that you were created to be, but you don't realize it yet. That realization takes root inside of you. Then you become a magnet for others, and when you are drawn to each other, you will become one unit that functions for the purpose of bringing balance to all of humanity. I hope that helps, Ron.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. What you just said brought up a question in me, Pastor, that how you're always saying that Nick and Janice are lucky because they didn't grow up like in the church, so to speak, like all the rest of us. So was that for Black people in general, and I'm using this also as a metaphor too, was that taking away of our culture kind of a gift in a way? So that we could find the realness of who we are?
Yes, I do believe that. I believe that our language and our culture was altered, not simply because it was taken, but because there were so many different units that we came from, so many different areas we came from. I believe that we had to develop a culture. If you think about the culture of what is called culture in this nation, that is beneficial, that is a rich culture, it came from us. Whether it be culinary, or whether it be musical, or whether it be the idea of forgiveness. That spirituality, it came from us. I do believe that we were formed into a nation on the waters, but I believe that nation had to learn from the book that enslaved it, and in learning from the book that enslaved it, it became such a part of the cultural life of this new nation until this nation began to question it. And generation after generation held to it and sought to use it for deliverance. And there arose a generation who simply had questions about what all this means because they never saw things change. And because of the questions that we raised, and without having answers given, but there was a generation who came from us who did not go through the indoctrination that we went through. And they began to benefit from the questions we raised and the answers that we were being given. And that is the reason I see, as you said, Nick, Janice, that group of that generation as being are more open to understanding and embracing the metaphysical or the spiritual aspects of our essence than we were, and at a place where we are headed as opposed to where we are, because regardless of how many questions we raise and how many answers we have received, there lies within us the tinges of the residuals, rather, of this religion that held us in bondage. And to a degree, it still does. That is the one thing that we are constantly struggling with. I hope the response is what it brought some clarity, Arch.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And if I can add on to when Pastor Richard talks about giving up your free will, just to clarify that if anyone needs it, it is a sacrifice of ego, because we have the free will to use whatever energy we possess and are in an egotistical way, or in a selfish way, in whatever way that plays out. The giving up of the free will is the making that sacrifice of ego to no longer use your free will in the pursuit of selfish or egotistical things for the purpose of growing and evolving yourself spiritually, so that that energy, even if you don't know what to do with it, whereas you once were using it for whatever it is you wanted, so that that energy can be used for explicitly spiritual purposes. And just to connect that idea with something else that we're very familiar with, and that is, of course, the meaning of the word Islam. Islam means submission, or submit to the Creator, essentially. It is that same idea. Obviously, I'm not saying convert to Islam. I'm saying that all these religious expressions are based on spiritual truth. And they're all connected and all similar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It seems like a good place to pause for the day, but I want to say this. A lot of our discussions seem to be a little different than the norm of church, and I'm sure anybody who's been on the line realizes that. I strongly encourage, though, or would like to continue to encourage anyone that has a question or a comment on anything, please feel free. There's nothing we discuss that we won't pause to give examples or greater clarity to. So even if you don't want to say anything on the line, text somebody or send someone a message and say, this was said, I want more clarity on it. I want some understanding on it. That is encouraged. That is really part of the energy that drives these discussions. So just want to say that, because I know today some things were said that may be some things you may not have heard, but we let's sit down and talk about them if there are something that you need clarity on. Okay.
Yeah, hold on. This is Mary. Before we go, because I'm getting an understanding, a clearer picture of Jesus and who we are in relation to that. So when he said in Luke, the 4th chapter, when he said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor, he has sent me to heal. One day, a long time ago, I got a glimpse that it was me that was sent to do it, but then it scared me so bad that I pushed it aside because I'm thinking, I'm not Jesus, I'm not God. So just want to know your thoughts on that. Was my thinking correct, or but I was still deeply ingrained in the church, so of course that couldn't have been. So what's your thoughts on that?
Wow, I think everybody that has spoken today can speak on that, Mary. That's what we're trying to get across to us, not only to you, but to ourselves. We are the Word. This is us. These spiritual lessons, this energy is in us, and we've been taught that we are not Jesus. We have been taught that you are not Elohim. What do you mean? This is what religion has done to us. But yes, ma'am. This is about you. And as we said today, you are not only to deliver, but you are deliverance. So these things that have scared us in the past, as has been said, the inner workings of Jesus is what helped mankind. And I love how Audrey said, I see myself now. I can do this. I can get there. And that's where we all are. That describes all of us. We can get there. We are the deliverers. We are Elohim. We are the Word of God. All of this is us. And it's not us who. Not us who.
You were saying, when you were reading from Isaiah, it talked about in the year King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord. And the issue is, I saw the energy that I was. I recognized at that time that I am the same energy as the one that created me. And so that's the time when we have that aha moment of, now I understand, now I know who I am. I saw the Lord, and the Lord is me. The energy of the creation is me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I agree with Barb because you know how in traditional African cultures, when they say I see you, that really means something. It means that they understand you, they recognize who you are, and you have worth, you have worthiness, and nobody can take that away. So when they say I see you, and this whoever Hezekiah is saying, I saw the Lord. He really is saying, I see myself. I see myself. I recognize who I am.
Amen.
Anyway.
Yeah.
100% correct. And that recognition at some point happens to all of us in whatever way that it does. And without that context of, in our case, religious Christianity, it becomes the spark that ignites the flame that is your spiritual core that fuels you throughout your process on this journey. But because of that context, like Miss Mary said, we are afraid of it and we may reject it. And I thank you for sharing that, because that is exactly what happened to me, although I did not reject it. I was sitting in church wondering about all these things, and the closest I came to hearing an audible voice was this exact experience. I was like, what is all this? And I heard, although it wasn't audible, The thing you seek is you. But because I did not have that context to that same extent, that all that religious stuff had not yet been implanted in me, I did not reject it. But that is the,
Yeah.
what is that? That's the spiritual bar mitzvah. That's the spiritual bat mitzvah. That's the the point at which you begin to consciously recognize your path on this journey. Absent this religious context, that is the thing that is the point of awakening, in a sense, where you become conscious of your spiritual nature. Thank you.
Thank you.
And also, Ron, in what, Mary stated, and us, and for me personally, just coming into the spiritual awakening, was something, that I read that I think that is just, purposeful at this time. It states, I want to know me. I want to think, see, hear, smell, taste, and feel, but I cannot because I'm spiritual. I am spirit. I am spirit. I am in potential rest in my eternal space. I want to be and continue to become so that I can know that I am who I am. I am the creator who will know that I am the creator, but the only way to know is to come through physical form. And so what I heard, Mary say in the spirit is, again, us not being fearful of knowing who we are, but coming into that awakening now that we have even much more a desire, to know that we are Elohim. And not just to know it, but to be able to do, as Jesus did, these things or even greater things. So I think that awareness at this point, is something that's very profound in terms of us knowing that we know that we know. So I just wanted to thank, Mary for her comment, but at the same time being spiritually aware now to move in the spirit. I just wanted to share those thoughts. Thank you for letting me share that. I'm done.
Thank you, George. And I think as we said a few weeks ago, I think Nick said it, the signs of the time. I think comments like that, Mary, shows us where we are, not only individually but collectively. So thank you for what you say. I echo it. I think you're at a good place. I do. We are at a place where we're confronting our fears, and we're recognizing who we are in doing so. So
Thank you so much. That really helped me. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? And again, I think this is a good place to pause, and I encourage anyone who any questions and or comments that you may have when we speak of something that seems a little out of norm as far as the scriptures. Let's talk about it. That's a great place to start and begin and kind of unravel things and see who and where we are. So want everybody to be at a place of understanding. So again, thank you. I hope and trust everybody have a great day today, and I look forward to tomorrow morning. Okay. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, fam.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.